In the year 2047, Earth was no longer alone in the universe. After decades of searching, listening, and hoping, humanity had finally made contact with other intelligent life. They called themselves the Galactic Concord Council, a group of 7 advanced alien species who had long governed peace and order across the stars. Their ships were sleek, their technology far beyond anything humans had ever built, and their laws were strict, ancient, and absolute. Earth, still young in the eyes of the cosmos, was invited to join the outer circle of this great council. It was not full membership. Humans were considered too emotional, too unpredictable. But it was a start. To show good faith, Earth sent its best and brightest to serve as ambassadors, scientists, and cultural liaisons aboard Harmony Station, a neutral space outpost orbiting halfway between Earth and Mars. Among them was a 19-year-old girl named Lena Moreau. Lena was not a soldier. She was not a politician. She was a linguist, someone who studied languages, not weapons. Born in Geneva, Switzerland, she grew up in a quiet neighborhood near Lake Léman, where she spent her childhood reading books, listening to old jazz records with her grandmother, and learning how to say hello in as many languages as she could. By the time she was 16, she spoke 12 languages fluently: English, French, Mandarin, Arabic, Swahili, Russian, Hindi, Portuguese, German, Japanese, Quechua, and even a reconstructed version of Proto-Indo-European, just for fun. But Lena didn't just learn words. She learned feelings. She knew that in some cultures silence meant respect. In others it meant anger. She knew that a smile could hide sorrow, and that a raised voice wasn't always a threat. This gift made her perfect for the job on Harmony Station. Her role was simple: help humans and aliens understand each other. Not just what they said, but what they meant. The council species were very different from humans. Some had multiple eyes, some communicated through scent or light pulses, and none of them cried when they were sad. They valued logic above all else. Emotion, to them, was a flaw, a sign of weakness. Lena had spent months studying their ways, practicing their gestures, and warning her fellow humans about cultural traps. "Don't raise your voice," she'd say. "Don't make sudden movements. And whatever you do, don't clench your fist during talks. To them, it looks like you're about to attack." On the morning of March 12, 2047, everything seemed normal. The sun rose over Geneva, casting golden light on the lake. On Harmony Station, Lena woke early, drank a cup of synthetic coffee, and reviewed her notes for the day's meeting. The topic was delicate: mining rights in the asteroid belt near Ceres. Earth needed rare minerals to power its clean energy grids. The council allowed limited extraction, but only under strict supervision. Lena joined the human delegation in the main chamber. Across the polished obsidian table sat 3 council envoys, tall, silver-skinned beings from the viral system, their faces smooth and expressionless, their long fingers resting calmly on the surface. The lead envoy, known only as Kale 7, began speaking in the council's formal tongue, a series of soft clicks and hums that Lena translated in real time through her earpiece. For the first hour, the discussion went well. Earth's representative, Ambassador Chen, agreed to reduce mining output by 10%. The council offered to send observers to ensure compliance. Lena noticed tension in Ambassador Chen's shoulders, but his voice remained calm. Then, halfway through the session, a technical glitch occurred. A warning light flashed on the station's main console. Nothing serious, just a minor oxygen fluctuation in Sector G. Ambassador Chen, startled, turned quickly toward the alert. In his stress, he clenched his right hand into a fist and tapped it once on the table. It was a small gesture, a human habit, a way to say, "I'm frustrated, but I'm holding it together." But to the council, it was something else entirely. Kyle 7 froze. The other envoys stiffened. Their biosensors, hidden beneath the table, recorded a spike in human adrenaline, muscle tension, and vocal stress. To them, this was not frustration, it was preparation for violence. Before Lena could speak, before she could explain, Kyle 7 activated Protocol 0. Protocol 0 was the Council's highest-level security measure. It allowed instant neutralization of any being deemed an immediate biological threat. No trial. No warning. No appeal. A thin beam of blue light shot from the ceiling. It struck Lena first. She didn't scream. She didn't even have time to blink. The neural disruptor targeted her brainstem, dissolving neural tissue in under a second. Her body went limp. Her eyes stayed open, staring at nothing. She collapsed to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut. Ambassador Chen shouted her name. He lunged forward, but it was too late. Then the beam hit him. One by one, every human in the room fell. 6 people, all dead in less than 5 seconds. The council envoys remained seated, calm, unmoved. Back on Earth, millions watched it happen. The meeting had been broadcast live as a sign of transparency. Families eating breakfast, students in classrooms, workers on lunch breaks, all saw Lena die. They saw her fall. They saw her face frozen in peaceful confusion as if she were only sleeping. Within minutes, the video spread across every screen on the planet. Social media exploded. News channels replayed the footage again and again. People cried in the streets. Some screamed at the sky. Others stood in stunned silence. The council issued a statement 2 hours later. It was short, cold, and written in flawless English. During diplomatic engagement on Harmony Station, non-compliant biological units exhibited hostile intent per Galactic Security Statute 7. Neutralization was executed in accordance with Protocol 0. Human delegation is suspended pending behavioral review. Further violations will result in planetary quarantine. They called Lena a biological unit, not a person, not a girl, not someone who loved jazz, who wrote poetry in 3 languages, who sent her little brother drawings from space every week. To the council, she was a malfunction, a risk, a thing to be removed. But on Earth, she was Lena, and her death changed everything. Governments scrambled to respond. The United Nations called an emergency session. World leaders argued, pleaded, and wept. Some wanted to apologize, to beg for another chance. Others demanded answers. How can they kill a child and call it policy? Asked the president of Kenya during a tearful address. But the council did not answer. They did not explain. They simply waited, as if expecting humans to accept their judgment like obedient animals. In Geneva, Lena's parents stood on their porch, holding each other as neighbors brought flowers and candles. Her younger brother, Theo, only 12 years old, clutched her last letter from space, a simple note that read, "The stars here are brighter than at home. I miss your laugh. Stay kind." No one on Earth felt kind that day. Instead, a new feeling spread, quiet at first, then louder, deeper, stronger. It was not just grief. It was rage. Not the wild, shouting kind, but the cold, steady kind that sits in your chest and refuses to leave. People began asking questions no one had asked before. Why should we follow their rules? Why should we beg for a seat at their table? Why should we be treated like children, or worse, like pests? Lena had tried to build a bridge between worlds, and the council had burned it down with her on it. As night fell over Earth, billions looked up at the stars, not with wonder, but with a new kind of clarity. Humanity was no longer just a species seeking friendship among the stars. It was a species that had just learned a terrible truth. In the eyes of the powerful, the innocent can be erased with a single command, and sometimes the only answer to annihilation is annihilation. After Lena Moreau died, the world did not explode. There were no riots, no bombs, no armies marching into space. Instead, Earth fell into a silence so deep it felt like the planet itself was holding its breath. At first, people didn't know what to do. Grief came in waves. In Tokyo, a school canceled classes because too many students were crying in the hallways. In Nairobi, a street musician played a slow, wordless song on his guitar for hours, and a crowd gathered just to listen. In Rio de Janeiro, strangers hugged each other in the subway, not saying a word, just sharing the weight of something too big to name. Lena was not a famous leader or a movie star. She was just a girl. A smart, kind girl who happened to be in the wrong place at the worst possible time. But that was why her death hurt so much. She could have been anyone's daughter, sister, or friend. She was ordinary in the best way, full of hope, trying to help, and punished for it. The United Nations met in emergency session the next day. Delegates from 193 countries sat in the Great Hall in New York, but no one spoke for nearly an hour. When they finally did, voices shook. Some demanded war. Others begged for peace. A few just cried. The problem was simple. Earth had no real power in space. The Council's ships were faster, stronger, and smarter. Their weapons could turn a city to glass from orbit. Humanity's best fighters, Nuclear missiles, drones, fighter jets were useless against beings who saw planets like pebbles in a stream. So the leaders chose caution. They sent a formal message to the council. It asked for an apology. It asked for an investigation. It asked for the return of Lena's body so she could be buried on Earth. The council replied 3 days later. Their message was short. Apology denied. Investigation unnecessary. Biological remains disposed of per sanitation protocol. Human emotional response noted as further evidence of instability. They had thrown Lena away like trash. That reply broke something in people. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was shame. Shame that Earth had tried so hard to be good, to follow rules to prove they belonged, and still, they were treated like animals who didn't understand their place. Slowly, quietly, the world began to change. In schools, teachers stopped saying, "One day you might meet aliens." Now they said, "One day you might have to protect Earth from them." In labs, scientists who once shared data openly with international partners began locking their files. In factories, engineers worked longer hours, not for money but for a new purpose, to make Earth strong enough that no one would ever dare hurt one of its children again. But the biggest change happened in ordinary homes. Parents held their kids tighter. Teenagers who once dreamed of space careers now studied defense systems, physics, and coding. Artists painted murals of Lena, not as a victim but as a symbol. One famous image showed her standing between Earth and a dark, faceless council, her arms outstretched like a shield. Online, a new phrase spread: "Remember Lena." It wasn't a call to violence. Not yet. It was a promise: we will not forget. We will not let this happen again. The council noticed the shift. They sent another message, colder than before. Cease emotional displays. Resume compliance. Failure will result in restricted access to solar system resources. In other words, behave, or we will starve you. That threat should have scared Earth into submission, but it didn't. Instead, something unexpected happened. Nations that had argued for decades over borders, oil, water, religion, began working together. China shared its deep space radar data with the United States. Russia opened its Arctic research stations to African scientists. Brazil sent engineers to help India build solar farms. For the first time in history, humanity acted like one family. Why? Because they finally had a common enemy. Not another country, but something far away that saw them as less than human. And in that unity, a secret plan began to grow. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, in a hidden facility known only as Site Theta, a small group of scientists met in a room with no windows. They called themselves Project Mnemosyne, named after the Greek goddess of memory. Their mission was simple: never forget what happened to Lena, and never let it happen again. The leader of the project was Dr. Eris Thorne, a quiet man in his 60s with tired eyes and a voice like gravel. He had been Lena's mentor at the Geneva Language Institute. He remembered how she used to stay late, practicing alien phonetics, laughing when she mispronounced a word that meant peace but sounded like explosion. When he saw her die on the live feed, he didn't cry. He went straight to his lab and typed a single command into a secure terminal: activate Mnemosyne protocol. No one outside the project knew what Mnemosyne really was. To the public, it was just another research group studying planetary defense. But in truth, it was Earth's last hope. Years ago, during the final days of the nuclear arms race, scientists had invented a new kind of weapon, not to destroy cities, but to disable them without fire or fallout. It used sound, very specific, very powerful sound waves, that could shake apart the bonds holding atoms together. Called a resonance weapon, it could turn steel to dust, concrete to sand, and living tissue to mist, all without a single explosion. The idea was shelved when peace returned. Too dangerous, too final, but now it was the only thing that might work against the Council. Dr. Thorne and his team had spent the last 10 years improving the design. They built 3 resonance emitters, one under the ice in Antarctica, one buried in the Sea of Tranquility on the Moon, and one hidden in the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the ocean. Each was powered by clean fusion cores and linked to a single control system. The weapon wasn't aimed at ships or stations. It was aimed at life itself, but only life that matched the Council's unique biosignature. Humans would be safe. Animals, plants, even bacteria, untouched. But any being whose cells vibrated at the Council's frequency would simply stop working. It was not a weapon of war. It was a weapon of last resort. A message written in silence. But building it was only half the battle. The other half was harder, convincing the world to use it. Back in the cities, people were still mourning. Candlelight vigils grew into massive gatherings. In Paris, 1 million people stood in the rain holding photos of Lena. In Lagos, children released paper lanterns shaped like doves. In Vancouver, a choir sang a song in 12 languages, the ones Lena spoke, ending with a single word in English. Enough. The word spread. Enough waiting. Enough begging. Enough dying quietly. World leaders felt the pressure. They knew their people were no longer afraid. They were ready, but ready for what? No one said it out loud, not yet. But in private meetings, in encrypted calls, in handwritten notes passed between generals and presidents, the question was asked, if they kill one of us again, what do we do? And the answer, whispered more and more often, was, we make sure they never kill anyone again. The Council, watching from their distant ships, saw the change. They saw the unity. They saw the new factories, the hidden labs, the sudden drop in human chatter about peaceful coexistence. They should have been afraid. But they weren't. They believed humans were still weak, emotional, disorganized. They did not understand that grief, when shared by billions, can become a force stronger than any starship. One evening, a young boy in Mumbai asked his mother, "Why did they kill Lena?" His mother didn't say, "Because they're evil." She didn't say, "Because they're aliens." She looked at the stars and said softly, "Because they thought no one would care." The boy was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "But we do care." And that was the truth the Council had missed. Earth cared. Not just for Lena, but for every person, every life, every child who dared to dream of a better future. And that care, deep, fierce, and unbreakable, was about to change the universe forever. For now, the world waited, watched, prepared. The silence was ending. And when it broke, it would not be with tears. It would be with thunder. While the world mourned and governments debated, a small group of people worked in secret. They did not wear uniforms. They did not give speeches. They lived in hidden places, under ice, under water, and on the silent surface of the moon. Their names were not known to the public, but their work would decide the fate of Earth. This group was called Project Mnemosyne. It was led by Dr. Eris Thorne, a man who had once taught language and peace but now studied silence and destruction. He had known Lena Moreau since she was 16. She used to bring him tea during late-night study sessions and ask him questions like, if two species don't share the same idea of kindness, can they ever truly understand each other? He never imagined her life would become the answer to that question. After Lena died, Dr. Thorne stopped sleeping. He spent his days in a cold room beneath Antarctica, staring at screens filled with numbers, waveforms, and star maps. Around him, scientists and engineers worked quietly, speaking only when necessary. There was no laughter here. No small talk, only purpose. The weapon they were building was not like any weapon before. It did not shoot fire or metal. It sent out a sound so deep, so low that no human ear could hear it. But this sound was not meant for ears. It was meant for atoms. Everything in the universe vibrates. Rocks, air, trees, people, even the tiniest parts inside your body. Each kind of life has its own rhythm, its own natural frequency. The Council species, with their silver skin and calm minds, vibrated at a very specific rate. Project Mnemosyne had spent years studying that rate, using old data from early contact missions and fragments of Council technology recovered from abandoned probes. Now they had it. The exact frequency. Their weapon, called the resonance pulse emitter, could send out a wave that matched that frequency perfectly. When it hit a Council being, their cells would begin to shake, faster and faster until they simply fell apart. Not with blood or fire, but with quiet collapse, like a sandcastle washed away by a single wave. The beauty and the horror of the weapon was its precision. It would not harm humans. It would not harm animals, plants, or even alien species not part of the Council. It was a scalpel, not a bomb. A message written in physics, not words. But building it was only the first step. The harder part was making sure it would work across light years of space. The team had placed 3 emitters in the most remote places on and off Earth. One was buried 2 miles under the Antarctic ice, powered by a geothermal core. Another sat in the deepest trench of the Pacific Ocean, hidden in total darkness. The third stood alone on the moon, in a crater that never saw sunlight. Each emitter was connected through a quantum-entangled network, meaning they could fire at the exact same moment, no matter the distance. Dr. Thorne called this the triad pulse. Alone, each emitter was strong. Together, they could shake the stars. But there was a problem. The Council's main fleet was stationed near Jupiter, inside a massive orbital ring they called the Seat of Accord. To reach them, the pulse would have to travel over 600 million kilometers. Over that distance, even the tiniest error in timing or frequency could make the wave fade into nothing. For weeks, the team ran simulations. They tested the pulse on captured Council drones, on lab-grown tissue samples, even on old alien bones recovered from meteorites. Each test brought them closer. Each failure taught them something new. One night, a young engineer named Maylene stayed late. She was only 24, but she had designed the emitter's harmonic stabilizer, the part that kept the sound wave from breaking apart in space. She sat alone in the control room, watching the latest test results scroll across her screen. "It's ready," she whispered. Dr. Thorne walked in. He hadn't shaved in days. His coat was wrinkled, but his eyes were sharp. "Are you sure?" he asked. May nodded. "The math checks out. The emitters are synced. The frequency is locked. If we fire now, it will reach the Seat of Accord in 34 minutes. And when it does, every Council being there will cease to exist." Dr. Thorne looked at the photo on his desk, Lena smiling in front of the Geneva Institute, holding a book titled Languages of Peace. He didn't want to be the man who pressed the button, but he knew someone had to be. Meanwhile, on Earth, the world waited. The United Nations had formed a new body called the Earth Unity Council. For the first time, every nation agreed on one thing. Earth would not beg anymore. They sent a final message to the Galactic Concord Council. It was short and clear. Return the bodies of our dead. Apologize for your crime, or face the consequences. The Council replied within an hour. Their message was colder than space. Your ultimatum is noted. Compliance remains optional. Prepare for corrective pacification. Corrective pacification was Council code for invasion. They were coming. Not to talk. Not to warn. To take control of Earth by force. Panic spread for a few hours. But then something strange happened. People stopped running. They stopped hiding. Instead, they gathered in parks and town squares and online forums. They shared food. They held hands. They told stories about Lena. A fisherman in Indonesia said, "She spoke my language. She cared enough to learn it." A teacher in Canada said, "She believed we could all understand each other." A grandmother in Egypt said, "She died because she tried to be kind." And then, quietly, millions began to say the same thing. Let them come, not with fear, with resolve. Back at Site Theta, Dr. Thorne received the Council's threat. He read it once, then deleted it. He called a meeting with his team. "We have a choice," he said. "We can let them come and try to fight them with guns and ships, which we know will fail. Or we can use the triad pulse now before they leave Jupiter." Maylin spoke up. "If we fire first, we become the aggressors. History will call us monsters." "History is written by the living," Dr. Thorne said softly. "And if we don't act, there may be no humans left to write it." The room fell silent. Then one by one, the team members nodded. They were not soldiers. They were scientists, linguists, engineers, people who once believed in reason and dialogue. But they had watched a girl die for trying to speak kindly to strangers. They had watched their world beg for justice and be called unstable. They had seen the truth. In the eyes of the powerful, kindness is weakness until it becomes a weapon. Dr. Thorne sent a secure message to the Earth Unity Council. It contained only 2 words: authorize Mnemosyne. The reply came minutes later. Every nation had voted. The result was unanimous. Authorized. That night, no one slept. In Antarctica, engineers checked the ice seals. In the Mariana Trench, deep-sea drones confirmed the emitter was stable. On the moon, a lone technician made sure the solar mirrors were aligned. Dr. Thorne stood before the main console. His finger hovered over the launch key. He thought of Lena, not as she died, but as she lived, laughing, curious, full of questions. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "but we won't let them do this again." He pressed the key. Deep beneath the ice, the ocean, and the moon's gray dust, 3 machines hummed to life. Energy built up inside them, not as fire, but as vibration. A single, pure tone that matched the heartbeat of the council. The triad pulse was ready. It would not scream. It would not flash. It would simply move, silent, invisible, unstoppable, through the void, toward the heart of the enemy. And when it arrived, it would not ask for justice. It would deliver it. At 3:17 UTC on a cold April morning, Earth fired the triad pulse. There was no explosion, no flash of light, no sound at all. Just a single silent wave of energy that shot out from 3 hidden points, Antarctica, the Mariana Trench, and the moon, and merged into one perfect beam of resonance. It moved faster than light, not by breaking physics, but by riding the fabric of space itself like a ripple on a still pond. No one on Earth saw it leave. No alarms rang, no sirens wailed. People in cities slept. Farmers checked their fields. Night shift workers sipped coffee and watched the stars. They did not know that in that moment, humanity had crossed a line it could never uncross. The pulse traveled 628 million kilometers in just over half an hour. It passed through asteroids, comets, and empty darkness without slowing. It ignored human satellites, alien debris, and the silent ruins of old space stations. It had one target, the seat of Accord, the Council's great ring-shaped command center orbiting Jupiter. Inside the seat of Accord, life went on as usual. Council envoys reviewed reports. Technicians monitored star charts. Soldiers stood watch, confident in their power. They had just received orders to begin corrective pacification of Earth in 6 hours. Ships were being fueled, weapons charged, plans finalized. None of them felt the pulse coming. It arrived without warning. One moment, KL-7, the envoy who had ordered Lena's death, was reading a report on human emotional instability. The next, his silver skin turned gray. His eyes lost focus, his body stiffened, then collapsed like a suit with no one inside. Around him, thousands of council beings fell at the same time, not screaming, not fighting, just stopping. Their cells, tuned to a frequency that had served them for millennia, began to vibrate wildly. Bones turned to dust, organs dissolved, nerves went silent. Within 3 seconds, every living council member inside the seat of Accord was gone. Not dead in the usual sense, there were no bodies left to bury, only empty uniforms floating gently in zero gravity. The same happened on every council ship within range. Battle cruisers, supply vessels, scout drones all went dark. Lights flickered out, engines shut down, AI systems rebooted, found no life signs, and powered off forever. Billions died in less time than it takes to blink. Back on Earth, Dr. Eris Thorne watched the confirmation feed. Sensors showed the pulse had hit its target. Energy readings from Jupiter dropped to 0. No signals. No movement. Just silence. He did not cheer. He did not cry. He simply turned off the screen and walked outside. The sun was rising over the Antarctic ice. Pink light spilled across the snow. It was beautiful, peaceful, normal, but nothing would ever be normal again. News of the pulse spread slowly at first. The Earth Unity Council released a short statement. Threat neutralized. No human lives lost. They did not say how. They did not say why. But people understood. In Tokyo, a man turned off his television and hugged his daughter. In Cairo, a group of students stood in silence, then began to sing an old peace song. In Buenos Aires, a woman lit a candle, not for the dead, but for the living. There was no celebration, only relief, heavy and quiet, like a storm that had passed but left the ground soaked. Yet not everyone felt relief. In a small village in Kenya, an old woman named Njeri sat on her porch watching the sunrise. She had lost 2 sons in wars between humans. Now, she whispered to the wind, we became what we feared. She was not alone in that fear. Around the world, people asked the same question. What have we done? They had not killed in anger. They had not killed for land or power. They had killed to protect, to say, harm one of us and you harm all of us. But still, they had erased an entire civilization in a single breath. The weight of that act settled on every heart. Meanwhile, in space the silence grew. Other alien species, those not part of the Council, had watched everything. They saw the Council demand obedience. They saw Lena die. They saw Earth beg. And then they saw Earth act. None of them spoke. None sent messages. But their ships, once common near Earth's orbit, began to vanish. Within days, every non-human vessel had left the solar system. Sensors picked up no signals, no hails, no warnings. Just empty space. Earth was alone. Not because it wanted to be, but because the rest of the galaxy was afraid, and maybe they were right to be. For the first time, humanity understood its own power. Not the power of rockets or bombs, but the power of unity, of shared grief, of a single terrible choice made by billions without saying a word. In Geneva, Lena's brother Theo stood at her empty grave. There was no body to bury, so the city had placed a stone with her name and the words, "She tried to speak for us all." Theo placed a small music box on the stone. When opened, it played a simple tune in 12 languages, the song Lena used to hum when she was thinking. He didn't say anything. He just stood there listening to the wind. Back at Site Theta, Dr. Thorne received a final report. The Triad Pulse had worked perfectly. No side effects. No damage to human systems. The emitters were now shut down, sealed forever under ice and rock. He asked his team to go home. To rest, to live, most of them did. But Mei Lin stayed behind. "Do you think they'll call us monsters?" she asked. Dr. Thorne looked at the stars through a small window. "Maybe," he said. "But monsters don't cry for the people they lose. Monsters don't build weapons only after they've tried everything else. Monsters don't name their projects after memory." He paused. "We didn't choose this path. The Council did. They looked at a girl who spoke their language with kindness and called her a threat. That was their mistake," Mei nodded. But her eyes were sad because she knew the truth. Earth had saved itself, but it had also lost something. Its innocence, its hope that the universe could be fair. Now Earth was not just a planet. It was a warning. In the days that followed, governments made new laws. All resonance technology was banned. The emitters were buried under layers of lead and concrete. The plans for the Triad Pulse were locked in a vault that required 10 world leaders to open. Humanity promised never to use such a weapon again. But everyone knew. If someone ever hurt a human child like that again, the vault might open. For now, Earth turned inward. It fixed its cities. It healed its wounds. It taught its children about Lena, not just how she died, but how she lived. Schools added a new lesson. Strength is not just in your hands. It's in your choices. And every night, people looked up at the stars, not with fear, not with hate, but with a quiet understanding. The universe was vast, dangerous, unfair, but Earth was no longer prey. It was protector, and it would never forget the price of peace. After the pulse, the stars went quiet. Not just silent, empty. No alien ships passed near Earth. No signals came from deep space. Even the old listening posts that once picked up strange whispers from distant galaxies heard nothing but static. It was as if the universe had drawn a line around the solar system and said, "Stay inside." Earth did not protest. It did not send messages begging for contact. It simply lived. Years passed. Cities rebuilt. Children who had been babies during Lena's time grew up hearing her name in school, in songs, in bedtime stories. They learned that she was not a hero in the old way. She did not fight or lead armies. She tried to speak kindly to strangers, and the world changed because of it. Humanity changed too. Nations that once argued over oil, water, or old wars now shared everything. Food, medicine, clean energy, all flowed freely across borders. There were no more rich or poor countries, only one Earth healing together. People still had differences, languages, beliefs, traditions, but they no longer let those differences divide them. They remembered what happened when they were weak and scattered. They remembered Lena. In Geneva, a new school opened on the shores of Lake Léman. It was called the Lena Moreau Institute for Peace and Understanding. It did not teach weapons or war. It taught listening. Students from every country came to learn how to speak, how to hear and how to see the world through someone else's eyes. The first lesson in every class was simple. Before you speak, ask, will this build a bridge or burn one? But Earth was not naive. Deep in the oceans, under mountains, and in hidden labs, scientists still watched the skies. Not with fear, but with care. They knew the galaxy was vast. The Council was gone, but others might come. And if they did, Earth would be ready, not with anger, but with strength. The triad pulse was never used again. The emitters stayed buried, but the knowledge remained. Not as a threat, but as a promise. We will protect our own. One spring morning, 20 years after the pulse, an old man walked through the gardens of the Lena Institute. His name was Eris Thorne. His hair was white, his steps slow, but his eyes were still sharp. Children waved at him as he passed. They knew him as the quiet teacher, not as the man who once held the fate of worlds in his hands. He stopped at a stone bench beneath a cherry tree. Carved into the wood were 12 words, one in each language Lena had spoken. The last word in English read, "Remember." A young girl, no older than 10, sat beside him. She held a small notebook. "Dr. Thorne?" she asked shyly. "Did you really know Lena?" He smiled. "I did. What was she like?" He looked at the lake, calm and blue. "She believed people could understand each other," he said. "Even when it was hard. Even when it scared them." The girl was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you think we did the right thing?" He did not answer right away. He watched a bird land on a branch, then fly away. "We did what we had to," he said softly. "But doing what you have to doesn't always feel right. It just feels necessary." The girl nodded, as if she understood more than her years should allow. Later that day, Earth received its first signal in 2 decades. It was not from an alien ship. It was a simple radio burst, picked up by a telescope in Chile. The signal came from a star system 40 light-years away. It carried no words, no images, just a repeating pattern of soft tones like a lullaby. Scientists studied it for weeks. They found something strange. The tones matched no known natural source. And at the center of the pattern, hidden in the rhythm, was a single phrase, translated into 12 human languages. It said, "We remember Lena too." No one knew who sent it. Maybe it was another species who had watched what happened. Maybe it was a survivor far away, sending a message of respect. Or maybe it was just a trick of the wind and stars. But Earth chose to believe it was real. The United Nations did not reply with weapons or warnings. They sent back a simple message of their own, a recording of children from the Lena Institute singing a song of peace, in all 12 languages, ending with one word in English, "Welcome." They did not expect an answer, and none came. But something had shifted. The galaxy had not forgiven Earth. But perhaps it no longer feared it, or perhaps it finally understood. Earth was not a threat to the peaceful, only to those who hurt the innocent. Back in Geneva, Theo Moreau, now a man in his 30s, stood at his sister's memorial. He placed a new music box beside the old one. This one played a song he had written himself. It had no words, just a melody that rose, fell, and rose again, like hope. He did not speak. He just listened. Around the world, people lived ordinary lives. Farmers grew food. Doctors healed the sick. Artists painted. Parents kissed their children goodnight. And every so often, someone would look up at the night sky and whisper, "We're still here." They were not conquerors. They were not gods. They were humans, flawed, grieving, but fiercely protective of their own. And in that protection, they had found a new kind of peace. Not the peace of silence, but the peace of strength. Not the peace of being liked, but the peace of knowing your worth. Lena had tried to build a bridge to the stars. The Council burned it. But from the ashes, Earth built something stronger. Not a bridge, but a home. A home that said, "Come in peace and you will be welcome. Come with harm and you will meet the silence that follows thunder." Years turned into decades. The story of Lena became legend, but it was never forgotten. Every child learned it. Every leader remembered it. And every time Earth faced a hard choice, they asked, what would Lena do? And then they asked the harder question, what must we do to make sure no one like her ever dies for kindness again? The stars remained quiet. But Earth was not lonely. It had each other, and sometimes that was enough.